Hey, what's going on, DDO players? Axel here. With DDO's 10-year anniversary coming in February, I thought it would be cool to go back and look at some of the prior updates in the game, especially for you players that may have not been around that long in the game. I thought it would be cool for everyone to go back and just hear my thoughts on what the game was like in earlier years and what I thought of prior updates and how I think, looking back all these years later, how they affected the game. So the first thing you have to know about me is I have not played DDO since day one. I started playing DDO in around 2008, 2009, but I didn't get really serious about the game until a few years later. So I really can't talk about the prior updates before, say, update 11 or so. I started playing seriously around, I can only estimate, but somewhere around update 8, 7 or 8, I believe. But it wasn't until update 11 or so that I actually got my first character to cap, and until I really got really interested and really into DDO. So let's go ahead and start with update 11. I feel it's the first one I remember and I can actually give some good insight into. So update 11 was Secret of the Artificers. This gave us the House C pack, the Wilderness area, the House C quests, the two raids, Lord of Blades and Master Artificer. It also gave us a new game mechanic at the time, which was Bravery bonus. Look below in the video and you'll see the date at which these updates hit live. I don't have the date in front of me, but it'll be posted here in the video so you can see it. So what I remember about this update, now this was when I was just getting to my first character to cap, so I never really got into running Lord of Blades and Master Artificer back when they first came out, back when it was in game. I do remember a few things about this update in particular. Green Steel was a huge thing at this time, and Secrets of the Artificers felt like another crafting system modeled around Green Steel. I think because Green Steel was so popular and they wanted to create another crafting system modeled after that same system. But unfortunately, there wasn't a lot of reason that I saw during my time at cap during this update, that much reason to go after a weapon like a alchemical weapon. Green Steel was just there. It was a more popular alternative, and Green Steel items could be used, say, at update 11. And from what I know, what I remember to this day, and I haven't, believe me, it's been years since I've looked back at this stuff, but from what I know today, Green Steel items, I believe, did outclass these items, and there wasn't really wasn't a niche for alchemical crafting to fill. So I think this update was a bit of a bust. These raids, just especially today, they really didn't age well. You don't see, these are probably the rarest, the least run raids in the game, I would think. Definitely the least run epic raids, I would say. Other than that, we got a mechanic which changed the game a lot, which was Bravery bonus. And we all know Bravery bonus today. You get an extra reward for running Elite. If you run Elite, you start a streak, and for every consecutive quest that your streak continues, you get a more and more XP bonuses, and this caps out at a certain number of quests. I think it's like 5 quests or so. You cap your Bravery bonus, and if you keep running Elite at that point, you get an extra XP. However, if you drop below Elite, you do not get any extra bonuses. So you'll lose that bonus, and you'll have to start running Elite again to get it back. And that's, as everyone knows who plays the game a lot, Bravery bonus is first time only. So looking back at this mechanic, definitely the intention here was to give more incentives for players to run Elite content. But I think what we saw is that this mechanic over time didn't age well, and it turned more into a it felt like Elite was required more than a bonus. This felt like the norm rather than just a bonus. So people really didn't want to run hard and normal because of the Elite streak, because of all this extra XP. And we saw later on, just this year, the bravery bonus finally, this problem finally addressed, where they allowed you to pause your bravery streak. So that's helped a bunch. Other than that, though, I don't remember too much about this update. This was really when I was just getting into DDO and just getting into the end game, so I don't recall a lot. The same goes for update 12, also the Artificers. This update gave us the Can of Challenges, which I personally never really got into. I did a few years back grind out a belt when I was running a half-orc battle cleric that I wanted to try to get a really high stunning blow DC, and that worked out actually pretty well. That was a fun build. So this wasn't, from what I remember, a huge update. Mainly just gave us the Can of Challenges. So not a lot to say. Let's move on to update 13, which I actually do remember very well. This was the update that gave us the Lords of Dust, Servants of the Overlord, and Spinner of Shadows, and that was a big deal to me because at the time I believe I only owned Veil. Yeah, I was one of those people who was really cheap, and I didn't want to spend any money. I didn't want to spend any money on the game. I think at the time I was in college, so I didn't have a lot of money, so I wanted to just get what I could for free. But anyways, I did get my first character cap by only owning Veil. But anyways, Web of Chaos was huge for me because it introduced some more free content in this level range, where free content really starts to run dry. We did get the Lord of Dust, Servants of the Overlord, and Spinner of Shadows, and this chain was introduced kind of as a preview, kind of as it led up to update 14, which was the biggest update in DDO ever, which of course was we'll get to in a minute, which was the Menace of the Underdark expansion. So it was more of a teaser than anything. It wasn't a huge update, just mainly these free quests and not a lot else. Just more, it seemed like more prep work. But I do remember running Shroud like around this time, and really updates 12 and 13, I look back, and that's the most fun I ever had in DDO. Definitely, I just loved the game when cap was 20. I think the game was better when the cap was 20. I think that was DDO in its prime, and if you never played DDO before Menace of the Underdark, that's too bad, because it was a completely different game. And this discussion will lead me into update 14 now, which of course was Menace of the Underdark, and this was the biggest update in DDO ever. And if you didn't play, as I said, if you didn't play before Menace of the Underdark, you won't understand how much of a change this was. Like, Menace of the Underdark introduced epic levels, epic destinies, and this changed DDO completely. This is where DDO changed from a traditional MMO. It changed from more of a traditional MMO into what we have today. Before update 14, before we had epics, the game was more party focused, and less, you couldn't really achieve as much on your own. Like, characters had defined weaknesses. Like, for example, when cap was 20, a fighter could not get self-healing. A lot of other classes could not get self-healing. They could, but they had very limited options. Basically, if you had a melee class, your only options were Silver Flame Potions, UMD Heal Scrolls, or Half-Elf Dilettante. That was about it. And the same goes for, that's for melee classes. And for classes like clerics, like when I was running a battle cleric when cap was 20 before update 14 hit, you couldn't get near like what you can get now in terms of DPS. Like, the gap between a pure fighter DPS and battle cleric DPS was a lot bigger than it is today. Epic Destinies help bridge that gap. So those are two examples of classes having kind of big weaknesses that you couldn't fill. But the change that Epic Destinies brought in update 14 was suddenly you could cover your class's weaknesses. Like, a battle cleric could now take Legendary Dreadnought and vastly shrink that distance between a traditional melee class in a battle cleric, because those epic destinies really they really reduce the importance of the heroic enhancements. So because of that, the gap between the DPS of, say, like a divine and a traditional melee class was shorter, and on the other token, the self-healing thing, all of a sudden melee classes could heal themselves. So there's a lot of examples of that, and I'm not trying to relegate this only to healing and DPS. There's a lot of other examples, and I could go into arcane classes, but I won't. There's a lot of other examples of where you could fill your class's weakness, whereas you couldn't before. So because of that, DDO changed a lot this update when we got into epic levels. It started to change from more of a party focused game where you had a trinity of, a healer, a tank, and a DPS, into more of a, I don't want to sound negative here because this was but more of a solo focused game. I don't want to try to sound negative, but it was more of a self-contained game. Your character is more self-contained after update 14 than it was before. Like before update 14, you had to rely some on other people, like raids at endgame, like the Shroud. You for the most part you had to have a healer, and for a raid like, say, Hound of Zoriat, like you had to have a bard. Whereas when update 14 went on, and this trend kind of continued more and more to the future to where we get today, is there weren't roles that depended on what class you were. Pretty much anyone nowadays can fill any role. So whether you like that or not, and I really don't like the change that the game made here. Like, I wish the game was more like it was when Cap was 20, but there's also a lot of positive aspects to this change, and it's why the developers made it. Of course I'm not a developer, but it's why I can imagine they made it. They felt the cost of having people wait for a healer, because the downside, right, of having a game that required certain roles was that there's a lot of waiting time. And from what I understand is that the consensus of the developers today is that the wait time involved for the waiting on certain roles is not worth it. And you can see the developers make that same kind of post today. That's really why the game's gone in this direction, is that they didn't feel the wait time was worth it. So, whether you like that or not, it was a big change in the game in update 14. So other than that, we got, epic feats. That was a big power increase, and there was just a huge power increase in this update. We also got the Druid class, which was very cool. I personally have not taken a whole lot of time to run a Druid. If you are interested in Druids, though, I just want to say, check out Voodoo Spice's YouTube channel. I'll link it below in the description. He has all kinds of really cool Druid videos. But me personally, haven't run a lot of Druids. I want to get to it at some point. It's a class that I feel really needs to be addressed, and they will get around to a balance pass sometime soon. But there's been some things that I don't think were ever really fixed, like Bear, for example. I think that's one of the things I really want to see them fix in a Druid class. Like, Bear has never really been a very viable form. Even when it came out, like, Bear attack speed has been really bad compared to Wolf. So we'll see what they do with Bear, but hopefully they do get this class addressed soon. I mean, it's an awesome class, but I think its potential has never been fully realized. I think there's a lot of different playstyles I could get out of it by fixing some of the forms. So what else? With update 14, we finally got we expanded the game into Forgotten Realms. So no longer was the game only Eberron. We got Evening Star, which was awesome. And it was a whole new area of the game. Like I said, it was only Eberron up to this point. And we got just a huge amount of content in this update. We've got 3 adventure packs. We got the King's Forest chain, we got the Shindelern chain, we got the Demon Web chain. We got a quest in the Underdark. So I think we got, what is that like? We got like 4 adventure areas in this update. Like, imagine that. That is just crazy. Granted, this was a paid expansion, but we got so much content. We of course got the raid, Caught in the Web. We got Evening Star Challenge Pack. We got a lot of really cool stuff. This was probably the most successful update ever in DDO. Like, when this update hit, so many more people joined the game. Like there was a population boom when Menace at Underdark hit, and it was so cool. Like having the servers be so lively for at this time. It was very, very cool, and it was probably the climax of DDO up to this point. I think population-wise, it might have been the highest it's ever been. Now, definitely fact check me on that. I'm not sure, but I would guess that it was. So, guys, that's going to be it for part 1. I'm going to continue this series on with one or two more videos. I'm not sure yet. I'll see how long it goes. I didn't want to make this one too long because I know people generally don't like listening to extremely long YouTube videos, and I've noticed on just by looking that you guys generally don't. You guys generally drop off after this time. So I'm going to split this into parts. So that's all for this one, guys. Hope you found this video interesting. And next time I'll start with update 15 and talk about the rest of DDO up to leading up to this year. Thanks for listening. I'll see you all next time.